Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, Mike and John with Coffee and the Bull. We want to say thank y'all for taking a moment out of your day and watching our podcast again. We really do appreciate it. So far, we've been going up, increasing in subscribers and
Just shout Red Bull into my eye.
increasing in subscribers and views and all that wonderful stuff that we're trying to get. So before we go any further, if you get a chance, hit that subscribe, follow button, share, all that other stuff. Before we get started, John has a gift today that I brought him. It's a chocolate chip cookie sitting in milk, but it's a candle.
Yeah,
So it smells like chocolate chip cookie. So y'all may not be able to smell it, but it smells wonderful in here right now because John needs a shower. But
He's not lying.
no, but all jokes aside, guys, we're going to be talking about some stuff that's kind of dark today. So, if you're not in a good headspace, or something like that, this episode may not be for you right now.
At the same time, if you're not in a good headspace, it may be the right
It
episode
may
for
be,
you.
yeah. So, it may be worth checking out. That being said, we're going to be talking about
checking out.
we're going to be talking about some pretty dark stuff. So if you are, a little disclaimer, like we've done several times before, if you are struggling with something, whether it's thoughts of hurting yourself or hurting somebody else, don't sit around and listen to this. Take a moment, go ahead, call 988 and get you some medical help. Those are the medical professionals, or mental health professionals.
And look, if you don't want to go that route, if you're worried about the stigmas and everything else, call a friend. If you're really worried, email us. We get it directly, and we'll gladly talk to somebody.
But there are resources out there, so don't try to take it by yourself. Don't try to go down that bridge alone. Definitely, there's always, despite feeling alone, there's always somebody who is willing to answer that call,
Right.
and have that conversation with you.
And to piggyback off of that, if you find yourself in a boat where the person that you're reaching out to isn't beneficial, or maybe the way they're going about it isn't helpful, find somebody else.
Right.
Not every road is meant for you to travel.
Well, not only that, not everybody has the answers.
Fact.
A lot of people who try to help may not be able to help. Unfortunately.
Right.
So and there's not. And again, that's the purpose of having a conversation.
Right. And just a heads up for everybody watching. Because it seems to be a question we get asked every now and then when people find out. Everything we talk about is personal situations that directly involve ourselves or each other on different things. We are law enforcement, but we don't ever bring up anybody's personal situations or anything that we've dealt with there. But we bring up the fact of how those things affected us in our day-to-day lives. And so just kind of giving you guys a little heads up so we don't have to keep answering that question. This is not a cop shop talk.
We're not telling a bunch of cop stories,
right,
and try to be entertaining.
Right. This isn't Monday Night Quarterbacking anything. We don't stand on one side or the other of any of these political debates. We don't choose sides as far as cops or not cops, or law enforcement or not law enforcement, or right or wrong in that aspect. We stand behind and stand on our own values and principles and where we are in life,
right,
and how things have affected us and how we conduct ourselves based off of that. And to be fair, just to kind of address it, Mike and I had an approach to life prior to our discussion of the podcast and how we were going to go about the podcast. And we have noticed a very significant change in the way that we approach situations, not only in our day-to-day lives, but also in law enforcement, when we handle some of these higher stress situations or individuals that are having those breakdowns and going through life.
Right.
And so if anything, we're an example of how you can change not only your thought process, but the way that you approach your struggles in life. So take that for what it's worth, and understand that the premise of our podcast is just to help everybody as best that we can with our own experiences and our own life stories. And that's really all this is. This isn't anything other than that.
Right. Well, so we'll go ahead and get started. Kick it off, and just dive head first in. When I was growing up, it was not common, or at least I don't remember it being common, hearing of people who had checked out.
Right.
It happened. I had a childhood friend of mine that his dad had gone that route,
Right.
and he was being raised by his grandparents, and I think he was being raised by his grandparents. His brothers, one of his brothers was raised by the grandparents. The other brother was living with another set of grandparents, and so it destroyed the family mechanism or the family unit that he had.
Yeah.
And then he wound up, unfortunately becoming a troubled child. But outside of that, man, I don't remember hearing a lot of those instances taking place.
Well, like we talked about, it's crazy how, growing up we thought quicksand was going to be the biggest threat to life.
Right.
And it turns out it's the thoughts and desires of checking out early,
Right.
Or your friends and family doing it.
And so it's one of the things where over time, I guess maybe in my early 20s, I kind of had a more arrogant approach to it,
Right.
where, guys who had made that decision and decided to end their life on their own terms, I'll give them that, had, those were considered weak people.
Right.
And
Couldn't hack it in
they,
life.
they couldn't handle it.
Right.
Oh, their dads must not have held them enough or gave them enough hugs, and
Right.
so it was a very ignorant approach.
Right.
It was very arrogant, and honestly, life hadn't really kicked me in the teeth yet.
Right.
And so I think that might be the reasoning for it.
And I'm right there with you. I felt the same way about it. Most of my life was that's a coward's way out.
Right.
That's you're a weak individual. You can't hack it if that's your approach is to just lose the war and check out. But like over time, when you deal with it so much, and granted, we are exposed to it a lot more than the average person.
Right.
But we walk into it and you've got to lock your stomach up. You've got to try to keep your wits about you through the circumstances, and then you've got to go home and act like you didn't just see some
Right,
gruesome
right,
scene, depending on how it went down. And that's a struggle I know we both have.
Well,
and trying to be
so-
normal.
Well, and that's going to be, just kind of a heads up. That's going to be kind of the theme of this episode is as guys who've decided to check out, they've decided
Right.
to end their life, and they honestly they've lost a war.
Yeah.
So that's just give you a heads up. That's where this episode's going to
Right.
go. So again, if you're up for it, hang on. I think it'll be beneficial for you. But if
Buckle
you're not
up.
there right now, then hit pause and come back to it later.
Right, and
But,
look, it's going to get dark before it gets light,
Right,
in
right.
your situation and in this conversation, and that's why we titled this episode "Goodbye, Friend."
Yeah, it's goodbye, my friend.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's we'll start off. My one of the issues that I had is, or that I've noticed in the different people that we've had, and they honestly served as a driving force for us with this podcast.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was definitely we didn't sit down and say, hey, let's have a let's start doing a podcast and talk
Right.
about each other's feelings.
Right.
It was like, hey man, look, we're getting these phone calls a lot more often than
Right.
what we would like, and so it was.
And the thing that we noted was it wasn't the phone call from your friend saying, "Man, I'm in a low spot and I need
Right,
help." It was a
right.
phone call from another friend saying, "Hey, so and so's checked out today."
Well, and that's what happened to me years ago, with a guy that we worked with together, where, and for the sake of their families and to give them respect, we're not going to use their names,
Right.
but I remember I was working in, it was right after a hurricane had happened, and
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some construction. I was at a friend's house, I was at a friend's house working on it because he had a tree fall through his house and everything. And,
Yeah.
and everybody's got, if you've never experienced the aftermath of a hurricane in South Louisiana or Florida or whatever, it is a time where everybody's stressed out.
Yeah.
You're at your wit's end, even if you're the best person in the world.
Yep.
Power's not out, or I'm sorry, the power is out. So a lot of people don't have running water. They don't,
Yep.
so that which means they're not taking showers. And God knows we could all use a shower. If you don't think you can use a bath, come to South Louisiana in the middle of August.
Right, spend
when it's
20 minutes outside.
95 degrees
Yeah.
outside, and you got sweat all the way down to your toes, and tell me you don't need a bath after that. But so you've got that going on. A lot of people with electric stoves and stuff like that, they can't cook. So they're eating cold sandwiches, and nobody likes a cold sandwich, not even Jimmy John's.
Right.
And so it's one of those where people's houses are destroyed, or maybe not they're destroyed. They're damaged to the extent where, hey, I don't have 40 grand sitting in my bank account
Right.
to go do this on my own. I've got to now deal with the insurance company, and that's always, that's like Christmas time dealing with an insurance company.
Oh, goodness.
It's like if you ever want to pull your teeth out, then deal with an insurance company. But
if you know me, you know I don't ever want to pull my teeth out.
So it's one of those things where everybody was at their, everybody's stressed out, overworked, they're tired, they're not sleeping, they're at their wits' end.
Right.
And I think it was you that gave me a call and said, hey, so and so, just want to give you a heads up. He ended his life this morning.
Right. Checked
and
out.
And I didn't have a big dramatic, phone falling to the ground or
Right.
anything like that because, unfortunately we've been exposed to it too much. And that was not the first time I've received a phone call like that. But it made me, kind of step back for a minute. I will give him that, because he meant a lot to me.
Right.
And I think he was legit one of the few guys that you see in the world who, when they say, hey, you can't really say anything bad about this person, he was that type of guy.
Yeah. Dedicated to his family.
Whether he knew you for a day or a year or 10 years, he was just as nice and cordial with you,
right,
as if y'all were friends your entire life.
Well, it's funny is that you bring it up because he was a guy that we had run into. He was in law enforcement,
right,
and he'd gone on to other things afterwards, but was still tied really closely with law enforcement. And we had run into a guy that he had just had to manhandle.
Mm-hmm.
It was a circumstance. It had gotten kind of violent, and him and that guy were still friends to that day that I'd been introduced to.
Because that's how he
the
carried
guy.
himself.
Because that's who he was. He was a charismatic. He was happy and go lucky to everybody. I'd never heard anybody say a bad word about it, and that's what threw me off about the whole situation is that was not the guy
right.
that you saw doing anything like that.
You never would have expected it. And,
right.
And he was the one that made me change my view. Because he's the one where prior to that it was, hey, they're weak. They had or they had a moment of weakness.
Right.
Or whatever. For him, it was like, no, there's obviously something else going on. Because
right.
I remember he was real pivotal for me in my early law enforcement career, and I remember the conversation that me and him had where I'm like, okay, he's not this guy who's struggling with or scared or anything like that.
Right.
Like he was a very strong dude, or he appeared to be a very mentally strong guy.
Hands on, and he knew if you were brand new,
right,
how to break that mentality of, oh, gross, I don't want to be a part of any of this.
Right.
Like, yeah, no,
right.
no.
So, it was, for me, that changed my mentality on how I looked at it, where it's like, okay, maybe I was young or naive whenever
right.
I thought what I was thinking. And so now it's somebody who's close, and, maybe I was wrong. And so that changed my mindset there, where it's like, okay, it didn't carry the stigma that had grown up. Because
right.
As well as I do, it's when you start talking about, people who in their lives, everybody who gets that phone call, you initially have that reaction of man, I wish I could have done something. I didn't know
right.
that was going to happen. And you attach a stigma to it where it's like, okay, well, then there's nothing I can do. You
right.
feel helpless when you get that phone call, and so anytime you hear that theme, then that's the same mindset you have. Is
right.
okay, there's nothing I can do. It is what it is. And that becomes where we get the phrase, the mental battle is only when you fight alone, is because those people who make that decision are alone.
Right.
Not one has ever done it surrounded by family that I've been around.
Right.
Now I've had it where
I did have that one, but that was
I had one where it was they separated themselves from their family.
Right. Right.
They made it where they were alone because they didn't want their family to be in that
right.
situation. But there's an isolation mechanism that takes place, and when you start looking at it,
cutting yourself off,
and that is what happens with a lot of guys. Whether from the first instance of stress in our life, we'd rather not talk about it, and we'd rather not discuss different things with our friends or whatever, because hey, you don't want to be the Debbie Downer at the party,
right, right.
You don't want to go to the barbecue and and start boohooing on the pulled pork.
And you don't want it 6 months later to come back up where they're like, hey,
right.
how you doing? You still
struggling? That time you're a
struggling?
big wuss,
Right, right.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, isolation is a key element in it. But I think there's so much more to this, but we don't discuss it because it is a sensitive topic for
Right,
somebody.
right.
Because unfortunately, like we were talking about, where hey, you look at it one way, where it's like, okay, you have a misconception of what it really is because you haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
You have those guys who, oh, these are just weak people, and then you have the other people who's experienced it, where they're heartbroken because that's a loved one, or
Right.
or something like that, and you can't. Unfortunately, the way we have it set up now is we've got to find a way to bridge that gap
Yeah.
between those two groups of people.
See, and when I got the call about him, my brain, I mean, I had the same thoughts you did, but my brain went a different direction because it wasn't a what could I have done differently. Him and I weren't on
Right.
that communicative level to where I could have texted or I could have called. Like, it would have been out of the normal. And I realized then that I don't have the communicative skill set to intentionally talk to my people.
Right.
Like yesterday, it was a bizarre day. I don't think we talked at all yesterday
No.
outside of once we got off of work. And it did not dawn on me until that evening that we had not talked all day.
Right.
And like, it dialed me back into, because so if you guys are watching and you don't understand, Mike and I, we choose a topic, we spend the week kind of going over how we're going to do it. We don't script anything. We don't we have a very loose structure, but we spend that week trying to get our heads wrapped around the topic. So this last week has been really dark for me because I knew we were going to go down this road.
Right.
And I wanted to get in that frame of mind. And I realized last night that I don't take the correct friend standpoint with a lot of our friends and take that effort to reach out. And I've slowly been starting to curb that and change it to be a better friend, for lack of terms. So, like, for example, like, now I go out of my way to, in the most awkward ways possible, tell you I love you. Because in the true sense of the word, I know that I'd be lost if I lost you in any kind of way, because you are the balance in my my life sometimes. And so,
I don't know if you could hear my eyes rolling.
oh, I did. That's why I gave the camera a smile and wink. So in that regard, we as men, we've got to break that line. We've got to break the stigma. We've got to start checking on our friends, because at the end of it, when you get that phone call, there's nothing you can do at that point.
Right,
They
right.
checked out. Their war's over. You can't be, support in the war for them if you never made the effort to be the support. And they don't know they have support, because we as men, we're not reaching out. We're
Right.
not checking those boxes. We're not, waking up in the morning like, and I tie it into the dating world, right? If back in my heyday, I had probably 10 women that I would message on a regular basis. I'm bragging a little bit. Maybe I'm lying. We don't know. But I would make sure when I woke up,
We know you're lying.
copy and paste that message, send it to those ladies, and be like, boop, good morning, beautiful, because that's what you ladies like to hear. So send that message, but how often do we do that to our friends?
Right.
How often are we checking on your boy?
So I think I have an answer for you on that one, but I don't think it's your stereotypical answer. I think a lot of it is we are scared of having that conversation with our friends.
Yeah.
Because we're not as mentally strong as we think we
Right,
are.
or emotionally inept to connect.
And what I mean by that is, 22-year-old Mike would not have had a conversation with anybody about suicide. One,
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't experienced any of those.
I hate when you make a mistake and I have to edit it.
Yeah. So, I hadn't experienced life that had put me at that point. Granted, up to that point, my life was not perfect, but it also wasn't bad. Like, my dad did a really good job of keeping me from a lot of trauma. I had stress, just like everybody else does, going through college and working 2 jobs through college and stuff like that. But, and death of family members, death of friends, things like that. So life happened, but it wasn't, I don't remember having the battle going on there.
Right, trying to understand
that being
that darkness, yeah.
I was also very immature at that stage of my life,
Right.
and we all, when you're 25 years old and you look back at your 15-year-old self, you look at how dumb you were.
Right,
That's all you see. And when you're 35, you look back at your 25-year-old self, and you're like, wow, that guy was dumb too. And so I can only imagine. I haven't made it to 45 yet, but I can imagine when I'm 45 and look back at 35, like, wow, that guy was dumb.
Right. What were you thinking?
It's one of those. I had a one of my youth pastors when I was a teenager. He told me. He gave me a statement. He said, "You were never as dumb or as cool as you thought you were."
Ever.
And so I thought that was funny. But one of the issues that you run into is if you're going to talk about a dark subject, typically we want to be the hand that helps hold somebody up. We don't. But if you're going to be honest about it, we've all been in those situations. Right. Kind of like you had mentioned earlier. As we're kind of pre-gaming the episode, where it was, how did you word it? Whether it be for a long period of time or even if it's just a fleeting moment, we've all been through that situation.
Right.
You've been overwhelmed.
Right. Stressed out and tired and exhausted. And before I jump on that one, I kind of wanted to tie into when my thought process on checking out changed, because mine actually happened.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, mine actually happened a lot younger. Because same boat that you were in. Stigma made me think, oh, that's weakness. But it wasn't until I actually lost somebody that I valued and respected. It was in the military, and again, we won't say names or anything like that. My guys from my unit will know who I'm talking about. But his reasoning is what bothered me, but it was him that changed my thought process. And most guys will tell you, especially as we get older, there's very few men that you look at and say, that's a role model, that's an example,
right.
That's somebody I look up to. And I'll be the first to tell you that my list of names is counted on one hand of men that I can look at and say, that's somebody I can look up to. That's somebody I want to emulate or be like. If
I can interrupt, I'm assuming I'm on that list. If I am, okay, I'll say that. If I'm on the list, as you count them out, can I get the middle finger?
If you're on the list, I'll give you the middle finger.
If I'm on the list, I want the middle finger.
Okay. So this young man, we were about the same age. We were the same rank. He had me by 2 days. He'd gotten promoted 2 days before me. We had the same responsibility, the same title, and the same amount of guys that we were leading. And everybody that knew me from the military knows that, number one, I was arrogant. I was very cocky. But if you were going into something, I'm the guy you wanted beside you, mm-hmm. because I may not make the right decision, but I made a decision, and by God, we're coming out of it. This guy was the guy that I wanted beside me in any fight that we were in. He was a very methodical thinker. He was very low tone. He didn't raise his voice. He hated yelling at his guys, and his guys hated him, but they respected him, and they didn't even want to go work for me because he was that good of a leader for them. And I mean, just a perfect example of who you'd want to emulate as a leader. And when we found out that he had checked out, it wasn't because of PTSD. It wasn't because of battle scars or finances or anything like that. The girl he'd been dating for 2 weeks broke up with him, and that was the catalyst, the straw that broke his camel's back. And so when you think about it in that juvenile mentality, you go, oh, that's it, 2-week girlfriend and you're done. Right. But in the long scheme of things, I'm looking at a guy that led men in and out of battles with fearless, just no fear at all. Had just a great head on his shoulders in terms of life. But that's what it was. And it was the loneliness that got him. And I remember getting in some trouble because some high-ranking people who were also young and immature were making some snide comments about his character and how weak he was, and how they mocked him and they mocked his family who would walk the area and everything else. And being the individual that I am, made my voice heard, and it got me in a little bit of trouble because it was more of a, how dare you disrespect his legacy,
Right.
the emulation that he is. And we take a different approach as men, especially when we're surrounded by other men, that we have to have this macho
Right.
machismo, attitude, and
Right.
we're unfazed by the hardships. But the reality is, I can't tell you how many times we've come home from a crazy, incident at work, and I've sat in that driveway and just been like, I don't know how I'm going to walk in this house and pick my kids up and, be okay with everything that's going on. And last night was no exception to what you were talking about earlier. I had a really good friend of mine. She had sent me a message. We've been friends since I was 10 years old, and said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm okay." To which she, obviously pushed the issue.
She just couldn't leave it alone.
Right.
Typical.
Typical. Pushed the issue, and she goes, "No, what's wrong?" And being a typical guy, not wanting to bust out feelings or emotions or whatever, I tried to play it off, and I was like, "How much time you got?"
Right.
And her response to me was, "If I'm asking you, I'm making the time for you. So what's wrong?" And I just laid it out there. And I'm talking about I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm irritated. I've got so much going on. I've got, and as this is all going on, I've got my daughter is playing with our dog, and my son is telling me his stomach hurts, and, they're hungry. And I'm just like, I'm not strong enough to keep holding up this world. And if the world crumbles around me, that's their world that crumbles. And I have two choices. I either let them see me weak or I let them see me fail. And I'm telling you, when I laid all that out, and this is just in a text message, this isn't even on the phone. I lay all this out, and I'm now in tears. Like, they're just streaming down my face. I can't control them. I can't undo it. And my little girl, as tiny 6-year-old as she is, Daddy, are you okay? And I'm okay. Do you need a hug? No, I'm okay. And now I'm sitting here, the monster destroyer, the guy who goes under the bed and makes sure everything's safe, and my 6-year-old little girl is holding me as I'm falling apart in my bed, and the tears are just streaming. And Daddy, are you okay? And I'm good. I'm okay. Daddy, why are you crying? It just happens. I got stuff in my eyes because I don't want to look weak. I don't want her to see me falling like that. And it just, of course, this is when you text me, and then everything starts to turn around. But it's that darkness where last night I have that fleeting thought, like, I could just check out right now.
Right.
All these problems are gone. I don't have to worry about anything after that.
I think that it's normal to have those thoughts because those thoughts don't mean action.
Right.
In the same way that, hey, we think things all the time, but we never act out on it.
Right. What do they call them? Intrusive thoughts?
So, yeah, you don't want to let your intrusive thoughts win.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, yeah, you can have those thoughts and understand that those are normal, but it's how you respond to those.
Yeah.
It's, did you reach out? Did you have the conversation? And things like, did you seek out help in one form or another? And like we said, there's a lot of people who, if they've got to pay for a psychiatrist, they're not going to do it, and we
Right.
can't make them do it. And there's free avenues available, but we can't you can have all the tools in the world, but you actually have to use one of them.
Right.
And
Well, and the problem with free is you get what you pay for.
Right. Right.
And I'm all about the whole concept of free Medicare care and all of that stuff. But in hindsight, if you're not paying for a higher value, you're not getting
Right.
it. You've got people who see everybody day in, day out. And so, like, for me, I've never chosen that route because, one, you've got to build a trusting relationship with that person to open up and divulge that kind of stuff for.
Right.
And two, the time it takes, and guys, we want immediate answers, Oh, that's broken? I'll fix it right now. We don't want I'll just piecemeal this together.
Yeah, it's going to take 6 months to a year or whatever. And
Right.
and don't get me wrong, it's like like I've got experience going to therapists. Some of them have been good, some of them have been bad, but none of them have been immediate.
Right.
And so it's one of the things where a lot of guys are like, man, why would I go spend all this time on go see a therapist or a counselor or
Right.
a pastor? Why would I go do that when I could spend a couple hours playing Call of Duty?
Right.
And
get my stress relief without having to pay for
I'll be
it.
mean to my friends who expect me to be
Right.
mean to them.
And honestly, I think that's the reason that we do what we do. I think that's why we joke the way that we do and the way that we take it, the routes that we do, because is it serotonin? Is that the chemical they say?
I'm not a
So
doctor.
when you laugh or you're happy, you have a release of a chemical inside your body that
Sara Lee. The dessert, like bread.
so stupid. So
Yeah, Sara Lee, like one of them frozen pies. You can't be mad eating one of them.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with your logic because I agree with you. But there's a chemical that's released when we're laughing and joking and we're having a good time.
Right.
And I think that's why we take that approach, because it's easier for us.
Well, I think it's easier and it gives some type of comfort, but I
Right.
think it's the same as a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things where, you have to accept the fact that, hey, all guys go through this. Like we've talked about, there's a reason why guys have this natural inclination to monsters and werewolves and vampires and I'm not talking about the Twilight vampires. I'm talking about legit
I almost spit my
legit monstrous fiends, for lack of a better term. Like we're obsessed with them. That's why the movie franchises that come up are just, they make millions upon millions of dollars,
Right.
because we are so connected to that and it's there's a, I want to say it lightly, there's a bunch of cringe-worthy stuff out on the internet, like, if you throw me to the wolves, I'll come back leading the pack. No, you won't.
Right.
No, you won't. You're
Right.
not that, you're not
Right.
that big of a
You
of a
ain't
baddie,
DiCaprio. You ain't gonna live inside of a
Right.
bear.
And so, you got a lot of those type mentalities, I'm a wolf, I'm a, this
Right.
or that or whatever, or, the devil whispered to me, there's something about a storm and I am the storm.
Her
No, you're
demons
not.
match my
No, you're
demons.
not. So it's one of the things where we are super connected to dark things. Like
Right.
we have no
The
problem
masculine
with that.
side of the dark.
Right.
Yeah.
But, the issue is just because you're comfortable in the darkness, because there's a lot of guys, man, they have walked through hell. That's just, there's a lot of guys, whether, from the time they were children, have just absolutely had a crap hand dealt their way.
Yeah.
Their path is hard, whether it be, parents not being in the home or abusive parents, we deal with that all the time, and it just, they move on to that. It could be, like our generation, nothing against the World War II generation. They're hands down the greatest generation.
Agreed.
But we've got guys that we know that have legit spent their entire career from the time they got out of high school to the time they retired 20, 30 years later being in war. From the time the war on terror started, you could legit log a 20-year military career and always be on a battlefield.
Yep.
And you don't get to just walk away from that. As much as it's not romantic like the movies,
Not at all.
or anything like that. Like it's not. It's you don't just go from that to normal life. And unfortunately, we see that all the time where guys suffer from PTSD. Man, they just break. And I know that everybody is going to be in firm support of the VA hospital because they do a phenomenal job of taking care of everybody.
That's the biggest lie I've ever heard come out of your mouth.
But it's
if you're from the VA watching, I can't say the things that I'd like to say to you.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it to ourselves. But it's one of those things where you got these guys who are just PTSD has become their best friend.
Yeah.
Or
they get
sometimes their
swallowed.
only friend.
They
I'll put it
get
that way.
swallowed into the darkness.
And that's where they live there as long as they can until finally they just give up. And that's where
Yeah.
you get the so many veterans commit suicide every day, or
You son of a...
we're doing push-ups. So it's so you got twice now. But that's where you get all these guys who are deciding to check out every single day,
Right.
and it's because they've stayed in the darkness so long that they think that that's home, and that's not home. Just because you're comfortable there doesn't make it your house.
Well, the thing about the darkness is And I've been there. I've been in the spot where there's no light.
Right.
And we're not talking about sitting in a room, turning all the lights off, and it's dark. We're talking about in your own head, there's nothing. It's just this empty spot in your brain where everything is dark. The worst of the worst things happen. And like you mentioned in the other episode, the boogeyman is the nicest monster you're gonna meet.
Right.
It's the monsters that come at 2 a.m. It's the bill collector monster. It's the my marriage or my relationship is failing monster. It's all
not
these
worth it.
right. And so you struggle with this battle that, like, I know I've done it myself. You went through some of the craziest things that life could throw at you. Things that when you tell people the story, they go, there's no way you did that. There's no way you went through that. You're lying. You're making that story up. And then 6 months later, somebody else goes, do you remember that time? And the dude that you told the story to 6 months earlier is like, that really happened? And you're like, yeah, no, I have no reason to make that up. And so you get in this brain set that the action hero that you were, or the Billy Badass that you were,
all you'll ever be.
is all you'll ever be. But then, I hit 39, pneumonia dang near kills me, and I'm sitting in a hospital bed going, what happened to the 20-year-old kid that would run through gunfire and carry, his buddies off the battlefield and do all of this? And so, again, back to these intrusive thoughts. And we talked about it a little earlier. Everybody has them. Every man out there. I don't care what your job is. Whether you're a military person, you're a first responder, you're an accountant, you're a Walmart greeter. Every man has this thought at some point in his life. I wish something would happen to me that would put me in a situation to be the hero of this circumstance.
Right. You want to be a hero.
Right. Even as little kids, we all played cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians, and you pretended you got shot in the arm, and you're still killing all the bad guys because you're like, I'm the hero. You want that situation. Even if it's just a daydream or a split-second thought, you want that situation so that everybody goes, that dude's a badass. That dude's a hero. And you don't realize, and I can tell you, that moment does not last. It doesn't stick around. People that knew about my incident were like, oh, that dude took a bullet and he kept fighting. Granted, I say outside in because you were there and you just talk shit about it all the time. But people on the outside were like, oh, damn, that's crazy. But it doesn't last. We're 4 years later.
Right.
That moment's gone. The moment wasn't worth it. But just as we all have those thoughts of, I want to be the hero and I want to be Billy Badass and I want everybody to respect me and look up to me as this glorious hero, we all have those thoughts, just like we all have those thoughts that it would be so much easier to check out right now.
Right.
And
right.
that's...
I don't have to worry about all these problems.
Right. I'm done now.
If I'm gone.
Right. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
That's the connection we're trying to make is... we all have the same thoughts. We're not as different as everybody thinks.
Right.
You sit there alone in your dark room and you're sitting there going, I'm alone. There's nobody here. There's nobody that would understand what I'm going through. There's nobody who can help me through this struggle.
Sometimes it's, hey, nobody cares.
Right. Or nobody gives a shit that I'm sitting in this room by myself and I'm thinking these fleeting thoughts of, I could just check out right now. My war's over. How could I end my war? What's the fastest way? And you get into that dark mindset of those thoughts of like, I could just be done. This pain goes away, and that's the other thing. We all sometimes hold on to pain because it's the only thing connecting us to the memory of what caused the pain.
Right.
Whether it's a loss of a loved one or whatever's causing you to hurt, you're clinging to that pain because that's the only way you can stay connected to what you lost. And you're not by yourself in those thoughts. You're not the only one that has them. And we're not going to go down that road of, you're not alone, reach out, get help. Everybody hears it and everybody goes, that's a load of bullshit. That's crack shit. I don't need to hear that. That's not what we're telling anybody. That's not the message we want to get to people who find themselves alone in that dark room having those thoughts. It's, you're not the only one. So it's okay to have the thoughts. It's when you start making the plans and following through that there's a problem. And we want you to know that when you have those thoughts, that's your opportunity to go, oh shit, let me make this phone call. Let me get out of the dark room, because when you get so comfortable in that dark spot that you start to look around and realize I can't see anything, you're going to miss somebody coming with a flashlight to find you and help you, whether it's, last night, my best friend of 30 years, 10 years, just 20 years, I don't know, math, just taking a moment to go, I'm telling you, I have time.
Right.
Talk to me.
Well, I think one of the things, and to bring this into a law enforcement aspect, one of the it's very, very commonplace, is when an officer's fighting for a suspect, and,
Right.
and I'm not talking about guys pulling away and you have to put
Talking
them
about
down on the
legitimate
ground.
to fight.
I'm talking about legitimate. This guy, he could be high on meth or PCP, or he's not feeling anything.
Right.
And you were just duking it out, and and it's you have these moments where guys take or cops will take, and they may not put radio traffic over the radio because, hey, they're busy. They're in the middle
of a fight.
Of whether it be trying to grab or punch or pull or
struggle, right?
Whatever. There's a struggle going on, and
Help.
there comes a part where having been in fights where, hey, look, I'm giving it everything that I've got. I've gone through all my training. I've now exceeded past that. Like, we're
Right.
doing whatever could possibly work.
Right.
I'm trying not to take this dude's life. Like, we're trying to just end this peacefully, but it's not working.
Right.
There comes a part where you have to take a moment and you focus, where in the ever-loving hell is my radio? Because I've got to key up and let everybody know what's
Right. I
going on.
got to tell somebody to help me.
And we call it, is what is the code for it for us.
Yeah, that's nationwide,
it's an
so it's not a
officer
secret.
fighting,
Right.
Our officer needs assistance. And when you sometimes you key up and say it, and it activates to everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you run into is, I know that sometimes my personality is not the most likable, right?
Says who?
And so you run into the thing where it's like, okay, I know that this guy may not like me, this guy may not like me, so they may not show up. But this guy, he likes me, but he's way over here. You don't even play. You hit it. You send out the call for help,
And you just wait.
and you'd be surprised who actually shows
Right,
up. They
right.
show up no matter what, because despite whether they like you or they don't like you, they don't want to see you get hurt.
No.
They don't want to see something happen to
Right.
you, or anything like that. And the same concept is present when you're in those situations.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the biggest best friend. Like, I've been having conversations with a guy who we've known each other for maybe a year, but it wasn't until recently it just happened. We happened to have some really deep conversations together.
Yeah.
And it's not it's just one of the things where just because you don't have the, hey, we've been friends for 17 years, I could talk to you. It could be whoever.
Right.
You can get help wherever. Nobody wants to see you struggle. They don't want to see you fall, and that's
Right.
what we've got to get past. Is just because you're asking for help does not mean you're weak. It just means, hey, I can't do this on my own.
It means that right now the battle you're fighting might be winning.
Right.
And instead of letting that battle win, hit the button. Let us come and back you up,
Right.
so that we can laugh and joke about it later.
Right.
And look, I'll be the first one to tell you. I've told Mike offline several things or several times that I've been in a dark boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've talked about it before. The very first time that I even began to see you as somebody that I could trust with my struggles. And I know that we've even said that there's sometimes I don't tell you the things that are going on because I like to process it myself before I reach out. It helps to have somebody that you can trust to unload that baggage on, and they're not there to make fun of you. It's to help carry you through it. And I can tell you, of the serious things that I brought to Mike, nothing has ever come back to blow up in my face.
Right.
We laugh, we joke. There's countless things that I've done that were stupid that Mike has definitely been like, you're stupid. This is what, no. And sometimes I like to argue with Mike just to argue with Mike. Happens a lot at work, especially over our jobs. I like to argue with him, but it's because I like to see him get frustrated and get mad at me. But when you find that friend that you know, no matter what comes out of my mouth in that particular moment, that's never going to get brought up again. I might get a text 2-3 days later. You good? And that's it. It's never something that's readdressed unless I bring it up again.
Right.
And that's hitting the button. That's calling for help to just say, I got to get this out. And last night proved to me that sometimes I don't even need you to give me advice. I didn't need my best friend to tell me, it's going to be okay, or that's just life, suck it up. I didn't need any of that. I just needed her to hear me talk and say, this is why I am where I am right now, and I'm just ready to be done.
Right.
And that's the battle that most of us are fighting and feel like we're losing, because you're just ready to be done. And I think that's where that episode we did with I Just Need a Win, that's where you're like, I just need one of these things to come off my plate. I just need something to work out in my favor, whether it's I thought I needed a new tire and I didn't, or any small victory. But to bring us back, I really just want people to start to realize or understand that the thoughts you have, whether it's I want to be this heroic person in a moment, or it's time to check out, you're not the only one that's ever had those thoughts.
Right.
And we're out here to have that conversation with you and have conversations about it, because if we don't start normalizing having those deep conversations, or at talking about topics that are, for lack of better terms, kind of risque or not the social norm, we're gonna continue to lose people at the ridiculously climbing rates that they have been.
Right. Well, so it's if I can interrupt a little bit, you got this idea, or it's a true story or statement. It's a true statement, but it's kind of watered down in my opinion, because they address checking out. That way you don't have to edit it again.
Thank you.
They address checking out as being a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Right. And while that's true, right, I think it gives a misconception that what we run into a lot of times, where hey, when you are, standing over, or you get the phone call, hey, so and so, decided, he lost. When you get that phone call and you're like, well, what was it? Because we all do it,
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's happened.
I want to know why they
I know
did
with
it.
us at least half a dozen times.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years. And so you get that phone call and you're like, all right, well, what was it? Was it his was it his girlfriend left him, or was it his wife cheated on him? Could he not pay his bills?
Right. Was he losing the house? Yeah.
What, and a lot of times, I know we've run into it where it was always something where you're like, that's it.
Right.
That's all. His girl, like your guy in the military, it's his girlfriend broke up with him. Oh, dating for 2 weeks, and you're gonna let that happen?
Right.
And what we miss is not just that one. That's not the only incident.
That's just
weighing
the
on
catalyst.
That
That's just the cherry.
That was the for lack of a better term, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
It's a culmination of everything that's led up to that moment, and to just finally say, I'm done. I'm not doing it again.
Right. Because you don't know. You don't know what the pile was. You don't know if that was like the 10th failed relationship, or you come to the thought process that, oh, maybe I'm just meant to be alone, or whatever. So it's no, 100% agree with you. We have no idea what the mountain was made of.
Because we have been to, I know the scenes that we've shared together. I say not really shared together, but we've just been on together.
Right.
I've responded to. And to show how big of a group this covers is, I responded to everything from teenagers all the way up to retirees who have just decided, I can't do this anymore.
Right, the war's over.
And they've made that decision, and you can't come back from it. And so now you're sitting there and you're trying your best to comfort a grieving family. And I'll tell you right now, it's in the same sense that if you go to a funeral, the it could be your grandma who's 95 years old.
Right.
She could pass. Everybody's still heartbroken.
Right.
There's nothing that I can say, that when I show up is going to make you feel better.
Right.
Absolutely nothing. Like we say, hey, give you my condolences or, sorry for your loss. And that's about it. We don't know. I don't know what a condolence is. But anyway.
We've had that conversation.
Yeah, we've had that conversation. So it's, there's nothing you can say. Well, when that person decides to call it a day and they end it themselves, the family still has that grieving process, but there is so much worse, right? And that's what, I had a young boy. His dad was one of the first ones that I ever worked.
Right.
And I remember the boy, his question to his mom, who, mom and dad had split up, and he decided, hey, I'm done. The question of the boy was, well, did he not love me enough? Was I not enough?
Right.
And I don't know how you answer that question.
No, right.
I don't know how you take and you try to give some type of peace to that kid, because I don't know. Like I just don't know what to do there. And so I think if somebody could have just pulled him to the side, that would make an impact in that guy's life, obviously, because he'd still be here, but also the relationship with his son. Now, how's the son going to go through life now?
Right.
And so we look at, it's a temporary solution or permanent solution to a temporary problem, but it creates so many more. And when you make that decision, you don't have to deal with it, but there's so many more that you're passing on a life of heartache after that.
Right.
Whether it be parents or brothers or sisters or kids, and we know there are some people who are legit. They don't have family. They've got friends. They've got somebody who's going to have to deal with it.
But this goes back to our communications episodes, where it's like, you've got to start taking the effort to find people with flashlights,
right?
To find somebody who can come in your dark time. You're not making yourself a burden on other people, and that's something that I've noticed a lot of the circumstances we get into. It is them feeling like the moment they offload or bring up the struggles that they're having, they feel like you're a burden to somebody else. And I can speak from experience. You feel like if I bring this up or I tell somebody what's going on, well, now I'm just a burden to them. The reality is there's an exchange that's going on. You become a voice to them, and they become a voice to you. You're opening a door that's two-way, where you can go to them on those days where it's, hey, you got a minute? I just need to unload this right quick. That door stays open so that when they need a minute, they can come back to you, and now the two of you can share an experience that you both have had. You've had those dark, intrusive thoughts. And while I understand the concepts that are broadcast out now about checking out about the temporary permanent solution to temporary problem, and nobody thinks about after you're gone what you're doing to everybody else. Well, in fairness, when that thought comes across your mind and you're ready to follow through,
you're focused on just you.
Right, you don't care. You're stuck on number one. Because my problems are gone. Mm-hmm. I'm gone. I don't have to feel this pain. Right. I don't have to worry about how everybody else is hurt. And everybody knows that if you follow through with it, all your weight is gone. But every single person around you is now torn because it's, what could I have done different? Is it my fault? I know spouses, that's the number one question I get from most spouses. What did I do? Why did he or she want to leave me? The one that broke my heart was the 16-year-old that I had, and he didn't follow through. It was a call for, and when I got there and I'm talking to this kid, and I'd interacted with him before for other things. He wasn't even a troubled kid. He was a good kid. Mom had left an abusive marriage, and they were still working out the legalities of being able to go see dad because he was good to the kids. He was just bad to mom. Mm-hmm. And mom's a struggling single mother. She's got 3 jobs at the time. and a 16-year-old son and two very young little girls. They were probably, I'd say, 8 and 4 maybe. Sweet little girls. And I remember getting there, and mom is panicked. She's like, he's saying he's going to end it. He's going to check out, blah, blah, blah. He's in his bedroom.
Right.
And in my head, I'm thinking, why are you leaving him alone in a bedroom? Like, kid just said he wants to check out, and why would we leave him alone in a room full of things he could check out with? So I walk into the room, and here he is. He's just a young kid, and I was angry that day. I was mad at everything because everything that could go wrong at work was bad. I just left 2 really bad calls, and I'm not in the mood for BS. And look, cops are human. We have those days. And I remember going in there, and I'm like, hey, man, what? Because I'm thinking as an adult man, what the hell could be going on in a 16-year-old kid's life to make him have these thoughts? And it's a selfish way of thinking. I'm not even going to upscale myself. That I was being very selfish in that time frame. And he looks at me and he goes, man, I love my dad, but he hurt my mom. And I'm here with my mom in a new house, in a new school. I don't fit in. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into the scopes of that. But he's like, I don't fit in, and mom's working 3 jobs, so now I'm taking care of my sisters. I'm basically being dad to my little sisters. I've got school I'm failing. I've got this I'm doing. And everybody's expecting me to be this man. And so I remember telling him, I said, okay, I'm going to give you some advice I never got. Mm-hmm. I said, number 1, welcome to manhood, because this is life. This is what's expected of us. It's not fair. I don't like it. I don't want to do it every day, but this is manhood. This is where we are. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about this.
Those questions you have right now are going to stay with you the rest of your life.
I said, and I was like, forever and a day until the last breath you take, you're going to do things for other people that you're going to realize you have no choice. You have to step into that role and be there. I said, number 1, what you're doing is admirable, because you're a 16-year-old kid. The other kids that are at school making fun of you or doing whatever, they don't have this struggle. They don't have this problem. And if they do, they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to be smart enough to say, I need help, like you did. I said, number 2, you're going to give me a hug, because I can see you're breaking down. You don't know me from Adam, and you're bawling your eyes out. And I know as a 16-year-old kid, you feel weak. So you're going to give me a hug. And when we were done, I was like, look, you're going to get in this ambulance. They're going to take you to the hospital. We're going to get you checked out. I said, your mom is going to get the number to the police station. And when you get out, they're going to call me. And I remember that was 4 hours later. I'm getting off work, and I get the call on my phone that, hey, we let them know you're getting off work, blah, blah. I was like, no. Keep me on the clock. I drove right back over to the house. I sat down with the kid for another hour and a half. I was like, hey, man, I work in this area. You need something, you call. I will come over here. I'm not your dad. I don't want to be your dad. I got enough kids. But if you feel like this again, you call. I will come out here anytime you need me to come out here, and I'll sit with you. I will hang out. We'll do what we got to do. Because you're a 16-year-old kid, you got no male guidance. You got nobody holding you, by the shoulder and being like, hey, bro, this is going to suck.
Right. So let me Monday morning quarterback for a second. So you got the kid. He's got all this that he lays out in front of you.
We literally said at the beginning, we're not going to Monday night quarterback.
We're going Monday morning quarterback this one. So you've got he lays all this out, and we didn't discuss this ahead of time. You didn't tell me that story.
No.
This is 100% just going down the rabbit hole. Why didn't you tell him to suck it up and be a man?
Because that's the shittiest answer you can get. That is the worst answer you can get.
And that's kind of where I knew that was going to go.
Yeah.
But it's inside every adult is a child.
Oh yeah.
Or inside every grown man is a child. My wife, I don't think she's got a child bone in her body. She's missing no fun.
Right.
But
yeah.
All guys like just being able to be a kid.
Yeah.
And that's because I think our brain stops developing as guys
right.
at like age 16.
Fact.
After that, hey, we've got it. It is what we might learn a task or a trade or something like that. But as far as mental comprehension and all that other stuff, I think it stops at 16.
I'm a Delta Force operator. You put a Nerf gun in my hands.
Right. So in the same way that, like, hey, you're not going to tell, and I don't think a single listener will be like, you need to tell that kid he needs to suck it up and,
Right.
grow a pair and all this other stuff. Why would you tell that to your friends? Why
Right.
would we tell that to another guy who's struggling?
Right.
And that is the message that gets put, across all this, across social media is, oh, suck it up, stop
Right,
being a wimp,
right.
you need to, seize the day, big dog, and all this other crap.
Right.
Well, that's not going to help out. That
No.
doesn't alleviate anything. That doesn't, that's not the solution.
Right.
And so I think that if we approach this topic the same way we would as in your case, an officer with a teenager who's struggling the same thing. If you approach it the exact same way, I think it'll get a lot more effectiveness
Yeah.
to come forward.
Yeah. The totality of it is there are circumstances in your life where you've got to suck it up and drive on.
Right.
There are things that you don't have a choice.
Right.
I've been in battlefields where it's like you got the guy crying in the middle of a firefight. It's his first firefight. He's a young 19-year-old kid.
Right.
That is not the moment. You need to suck it up. We've got to live. So
Right.
you've got to fight. That's that moment.
But when it's quiet,
But when it's quiet, when we're done, we're sitting in bed at, getting ready to go to sleep, in the middle of a war zone, or you're here, now. This isn't the time to suck it up and drive on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we get it. Life's going to go on, with or without you. Life's going to go on. And there's mornings you got to get up, and you've got to suck it up, put your socks and your boots on, and go to work.
right.
But this is not the topic that you just need to suck it up and drive on, because this is the topic that's going to make or break you or make you check out and lose the war. You've got to stop and smell the roses, as you said earlier. Stupid flowers. You don't remember?
It was outside. It wasn't on the podcast.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure we were
None of the
connecting
listeners
dots.
knew what you were talking about. Great job.
You did. You got to stop, and we've got to start having these conversations. And as dark as this topic was, we've tried to keep it semi-light so
Right.
that it isn't that heavy. But in reality, we're talking about death. We're talking about checking out, and we're tired of the phone calls. So and so checked out. We're tired of asking ourselves, what can we do different? We're tired of asking ourselves, well, what was wrong? He never said anything. He never, reached out, because we're men and we don't want to reach out. We don't want people to think we're weak. We don't
Right.
want people to think we're cowards or we're struggling. We want the persona that everything's going great and all our bills are paid and our kids are happy and our significant other is happy to be around us. And the reality is it's not the case. Sometimes you got to rob Peter to pay Paul, which I still don't understand that saying. Sometimes you've got to put off the electric bill to get milk, and especially with the way prices are going these days. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to tell your friend, I need some time. It's okay to tell your boss, I need a day. I'm mentally exhausted from everything going on, and I'm just at the end of my rope. I need a day to rebuild myself. I need a conversation to take the weight of the world off my back, because everybody has a world on their back. Everybody's weight's different, but it hits the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where this episode was going, and geared towards those fleeting thoughts. And we're getting tired of saying goodbye, my friend. With that note,
We're going to end this episode, guys. We want to say thank y'all for taking a moment and watching it. I hope that this helps out. I do ask that, hey, if you didn't really care for it, shoot us an email at coffeeandthebull at yahoo.com.
Yep.
But it also, even if it didn't help you out, send it to your friends, because you don't know what they're going through. Hit that share button.
correct.
Do all the podcast stuff. Like, subscribe, all, whatever.
Follow, share,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Do all those, because that does help gauge our effectiveness. We keep track of every single episode when we
Yep.
come in. We update all of our numbers and everything so that we can follow that. But guys, this is not something that we don't get paid for this. This
Not
is
at
just
all.
us putting our lives out there in an effort that hopefully it'll make somebody it'll help out in one way or another.
And I want you guys to know that, like, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. You'll find us on Apple Music as well as iHeartRadio. Go in and subscribe. The more that we get subscriptions to our podcast, the more we can broadcast the message out to reach people who, even though you may not be in the boat that we're talking about, they may
Right.
be in the boat. You may not even know them at all, but your numbers help us gain that ability to get out there. So get out there, hit the subscribe button like Mike was talking about. That's the significance of this is not our notoriety. That's not what we're going for. We're trying to help other people. That's our aim. That's our goal, is to help people so that we can get out there and not have as much as we're going through. You know, statistically speaking, males checking out is a steadily increasing number, and that is our goal, is to curb that number as best we can in a way that is not being done currently by the professional market, by the social media advertising and marketing. So like Mike was saying, like, follow, subscribe, and share. Shoot us that email, coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from people. Even if it's just, hey, you guys are stupid. We would love to hear back from you guys. All right?
So for now, toodaloo.
Stupid.